Okay, hello everybody, welcome back to Small Room Audio. Today we're going to talk about this. This is the Bluesound Node X. Yes, it is a streamer with a DAC and a headphone output. So far, so what? Because Bluesound do this every so often, don't they? They update their Node streamer. And if I'm being honest, the last update was not that impressive for me. It was good, it did what it said on the tin, it streamed music fantastically, but it didn't really move the game forward. And we know now that in the market it doesn't stand still. There's plenty of competition, and we see the likes of Eversolo and others move things along because they bring down the price and they increase the quality. So Bluesound had to respond. They had to do something which was a bit special. And their response is this, the Bluesound Node X. It's supposed to be a 10th anniversary limited edition of their streamer, but if I'm being honest, I think this has to be the new standard for any Bluesound node going forward because of the aforementioned competition that is there and real and ever present. So you've got to up your game, and I'm pleased to say Bluesound have done it here. I wasn't actually overjoyed when I first got this because I thought, well, it's got a few different improvements. It's got a Sabre DAC in it now, which is different to the Burr Brown one that was in there before. It's got a 1/4-inch jack output for headphones and a THX approved headphone amplifier inside. It's also got the usual streaming functionality inside it for the Blue OS, which we know to be a fantastic operating system that you can stream your music through Tidal, Cobars, etc, on your phone. And the usual outputs on the back for a Node, which are actually very good because you have the HDMI ARC input there, which is excellent for if you're using dual purpose. So you put this in front of your TV as part of your home stereo setup for cinema or TV watching. Now, let's take a moment to sort of talk about my experience with this streamer. First of all, I used it simply as a streamer, and that's why I was a little bit lukewarm about it when I first tried it, because it hasn't really, as a pure streamer, only streaming music through Cobos and Tidal and everything else like that into an external DAC, hasn't really changed that much from the last Bluesound Node revision. That doesn't mean to say it's bad, of course it does a really good job, but if you've got a Bluesound Node already and you're just using it into an external DAC, I probably wouldn't recommend this unit upgrade at all because there isn't much difference to my ears in between the two. This might be a little bit faster on the spec sheet, but sound quality wise it's pretty much the same. Now, where this comes into its own, the Node X, is if you want to use it as an all-in-one. That is to take advantage of both the new internal DAC, which is miles better than the old one, and also the external headphone amplifier, which to my surprise was very good. To sum it up then, what's the character and sound quality that you get with the Node X? Well, let me tell you this, it is very dynamic, particularly macro dynamics. It's got that boom factor, which going back to that dual use purpose of both audiophile kind of music listening and also cinema and home theatre listening, it's a fantastic value proposition because when you want the boom of an explosion or a car chase or the excitement, this unit really delivers. And that's the same for music as well. If you've got kind of drum tracks which are really thumping, or you've got some sort of, you know, explosive theme that you really love. I'm trying to think, Rodrigo Gabriela, I mentioned them quite a lot in my reviews, but they're very dynamic in their Spanish guitar playing. And if you haven't checked them out, please do stream them, or get a CD or a bit of vinyl, because they're a fantastic duo of Spanish guitar players, and they're very dynamic and exciting in their playing. And this really does pick out that macro movement between the sort of start of a passage and the end of it, and the excitement travels with you. So I think macro dynamics, big feature of the DAC that's in here, the Sabre, and also detail. It's got really good detail and decent resolution as well. What it won't give you as a DAC, talking specifically about the DAC element here, is that kind of refinement and nuance that maybe something like a Denafrips Aries 12th will give you. Similarly, it won't give you the depth and layering of soundstage that the R2R DAC Denafrips Aries 12th will give you. In fact, it's not actually as good in soundstage as a DAC which is cheaper than this. I know, don't fall off your chairs. Well, look, the Chord Mojo 2 paired with a Wim Mini is what I thought I would compare with this, the Node X. Now, why is that? Well, in that combination, you get a really good streamer, you get a really good DAC, and you get a really good headphone output. But it is different. The Mojo 2 represents, from a DAC point of view, a different sort of sound, much more layered, much more refined and nuanced in the top end, but not nearly as macro dynamic, not as much kind of push to the music, not as exciting. In fact, as a desktop amplifier, I found the Mojo 2 to be a little bit lacking because it was kind of difficult to use. It doesn't have all the inputs that this has. And certainly if you are a film buff or a gamer, this is the way to go for me over the Wim and the Mojo 2 because it's just easier to use. Whereas if you're using the Mojo 2 for its portability, then that's a no-brainer, and you might want to get a poly with it, which is called streaming add-on as opposed to the Wim Mini. Now the Wim Mini and the Mojo 2 still a great combination, and if you like it for just music, that might be slightly better because you can save a bit of money in buying that. But as if you're like me, you want something for all things, you want a bit of headphone listening. Let's talk about that. As a headphone output, this is a strong option. Now, it's not going to run Susvaras and really hard to drive headphones, but for most headphones, and the ones I use are kind of in the middle for impedance, they are the Audio-Technica R70X. They're the really lightweight headphones. They're quite budget. I think they cost about 300 quid. So they're not exactly high-end headphones, but with something like this, I think it's a fantastic pairing because the sound coming from the headphone output is very clean. Again, it's dynamic in a macro way. It's kind of similar to the Topping A90, just without as much punch. It doesn't have that kind of oodles of power, but it does sound very nice, and particularly in an all-in-one unit like this, it is really very good. If you want to use it for games, then great. Again, back to the HDMI ARC, I think it's a great pairing with headphones or with your speakers because you're going to have a really exciting experience. You're not going to perhaps use it with a competitive gaming environment because you might want to put on your HD800S headphones from Sennheiser and get that real spatial layering and awareness around you, and that's where you might lean into a kind of higher level R2R DAC or a Chord Mojo 2, as I say, because that'll give you a bit more spatial awareness around you. But left to right, this images really well. It gives you a bit of height. It's not class leading, but really the DAC and headphone output together is more than enough if you're looking at headphones below sort of 500 quid in that sort of level. If you want to go higher than that, then of course, sky's your limit, right? You could go get a nice tube amp, the Felix Euphoria, and say, you go get some HD800Ss and like an incredible tube amplifier, or get a really amazing all-in-one. But for the level we're talking about here, under £1,000, this paired with the Audio-Technica R70X, what a fantastic combo that is. I think it'd be really good with Sennheiser HD 600s or 6XX. I think that would be a really good combo as well because it kind of leans on the cleaner side with the headphone output here, and the DAC as well being a Sabre. It does kind of lean into the slightly more detailed and less warm signature, but it's not bright either. How does this compare to, say, the Eversolo? Well, do you know what? I can't do a really detailed comparison of that because I do not have the Eversolo all-in-one streamer here in my room, but I have heard it a number of times and I like that unit, particularly the on-screen kind of selection at the front. It's a really attractive piece of kit and it's well priced, but sound signature wise, it does lean just a tad thinner than the Node X, and because of that, despite the fact this doesn't have that beautiful front screen, I would still pick the Node X over the Eversolo because I just prefer the sound signature. And it is a product which over time I've learned to love because I've used all the different use cases quite a lot. One thing to be aware of in terms of negatives, on the back here, although we have the HDMI ARC, you don't have a full fat input for your optical. And I was like, oh no, what's going on? I don't have an optical input. But you do have an optical input. You just have to use this. I don't know if you see it. This is a little optical mini jack converter. You stick it in there and suddenly you've got optical. I didn't realise that. I was being a bit thick when I got it out of the packaging, but that saved me quite a lot when I've stuck my original Xbox into it, which, you can obviously do ARC into it if your TV does it, but I use a pretty cheapy off of Amazon projector for some of my Xboxing in the man cave here. So this is pretty good because that doesn't have an ARC output. So I can use optical with this little mini jack. Anyway, back to the Node. Really good, all in one. Really like it. Much prefer it to the previous Bluesound. It isn't something that is best in class as a DAC. It isn't something that's best in class as a headphone output. It's not best in class as a streamer, although the Bluesound OS is very good still. I would probably still pick the WIM Mini or WIM Pro as a pure out-and-out streamer just because of the cost difference, and the sound difference for me isn't really noticeable, if I'm honest. But as an all-in-one, it does all three of those things very well. It becomes much greater than the sum of its parts, and it is really fantastic. And I do think for the money, it's well worth the upgrade over the original Node. That said, if they brought us down in price by 100 quid, it would be even better. But with inflation as it is, I doubt that will happen. Also worth saying that when you're using this with the analog outs, you do want to get yourself a nice cable. I wasn't really going to mention this, but this is what I've been using, and it's brand new, and it's actually got me excited. This is a cable from Gothic Audio. If you haven't heard of Gothic Audio, which I hadn't until a couple of months ago when I was just sort of searching around for silver cables, yes, I know, metallurgy, they surprised me with how good value you could get a proper silver cable. And this one is cryogenically treated, right? So they basically freeze it down at ridiculous -3 bazillion degrees, and it changes the metallurgy and the construction of the silver, apparently, to make it a better conductor. But I don't really know about how they do that. In terms of cables, by the way, I'm never really going to push a cable on any of you. I'm just going to tell you what I use. And I've swapped all of my Interconnects now to these Nublu Cryos from Gothic Audio, simply because they're well priced and they sound a lot better than the cables I was using before, which were Audioquest ones. I've also used really high-end cables, some of them from Atlas, the Mavros range, and they sound almost identical to these, yet these are a fraction of the price. I couldn't recommend these highly enough. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention them because I'm excited about them. No affiliation with Gothic Audio. They're not paying me to do this. This isn't a push or a shill. I bought these and I loved them, and they're cool when the connection's in the end. Anyway, enough about cables. Back to the Bluesound Node X. This and this together sounds fantastic. Really do recommend it. I think it's a great product. Anyway, if you have a Bluesound Node X or an original Bluesound Node, why don't you comment down below and tell us about your experience with it? I think it's really good fun and really enjoyable. And do you know what? Sometimes you don't need to spend a ton of money to get a bit of everything and be really happy with your purchase, as I think most of you would be with this. Anyway, I think that pretty much concludes the review of the Bluesound Node X. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here very soon.